Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the StudioMEcast. I am your host, Peter J.S. Regan, and I have a guest here today joining us remotely from France. Her name is Celeste. She is a model, and I met her at the Rain Dance Villa party at the Cannes Film Festival, and we hit it off just great. And after just a few words, I said, hey, we got to have you on the podcast so that we can talk about the relationship between photographer and model, because we have a lot of photographers who come into our studio, and for photographers who are always wanting to learn more, or new ones, or whatever it is, I'm sure we've got something in this conversation today that everyone can get something from. But without further ado, please join me in welcoming Celeste to the podcast. Celeste, thank you so much for joining me today.
So thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure. And it's been a while. We haven't seen each other, so I'm glad to see you again.
You as well. How have things been since Cannes?
Amazing. I mean, this is the best season here in France and Nice. I love every day, Sunny days are the best days in my life.
We've had, it's been pretty hot here in Pittsburgh. This is one of the cool things also just about modern technologies. Like, you're over in France, I'm over here in America, and we're able to find a time to have this conversation. So I think, starting off with something, right out of the gate, let me just ask you a question. When you're going to work with a photographer that you've never worked with before, what's the first time you speak with them? Is it on the day that the shoot's going to happen? Is there communication in advance through email? Do you meet them? How does that usually go?
Mm-hmm. So sure, there's always a communication before, like shooting, but it always depends how big the project is and how many people are involved. And sometimes you may even have like several photographers, on set. So depending on that, but in general, yes, I meet the photographers the last day.
When working with photographers at there's different levels of photographers, right? As far as skill set, experience, is there anything that a normal thing that a photographer might do that you can automatically tell they're a little bit of an amateur? Like, what's a mistake that a photographer can make while you're doing a shoot, as far as interacting with you, that lets you know?
I think on this question, and perhaps it's because I'm a very empathic person, so I think there's always like a human criteria, So the way the person communicates shows a lot about the maturity and about the professionalism, And for me, the technical part is something, something you can learn. But if you want to be like a great photographer, I think you should have like both,
So you've done fashion, you've done commercials, you've done work in sort of a lot of different fields within modeling. Is there any particular one that you prefer the most?
Well, the thing is, like, when you do modeling, like, every project is like different, you're on a different set, you meet new people. So it's not like, repetitive things. So for me, it's like every project is very exciting. And it depends on the location. If you have an event, so you show it's like an excitement and it's like more people around, so you are excited about that. But I'm happy basically about each project, because for me it's like always a new experience. So I'm really like, yay.
Do you normally do shoots like out on a location somewhere, or are they ever like within a studio? What kind of places have you done shoots?
So basically all kind of things, like nature, studios, like hotels, like any kind of places. Like, yeah.
Does the location ever affect how you approach your work on that shoot?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, depending where you are, what people you work with, like, I mean, it affects many things, like the goal of the project, how you feel, what is the message behind that. Many things come together. So basically, yeah. And I don't know, the more unusual set, I work in, so more interesting it is. So, yeah.
Could you give me an example on how you might approach one differently from another?
Well, the thing is, as I said, for me, the first thing that counts is the goal of the project, and the instructions, and that we get from the client and then from the photographer. And then it depends on experience. If I've done something before, if we are shooting somewhere on the coast, and we're shooting, I don't know, bikini fashion and something like that, and we have the same thing. So I might come with ideas and I say and suggest things. I might say, okay, last time we did a photo shoot on a yacht, and that worked well.
It sounds like there's a lot of collaboration, or can be a lot of collaboration between the model and the photographer. How much is the photographer like directing it versus it being a creative relationship? Can you give some insight into what that can be like? 'Cause you mentioned like you contribute ideas. Like how does that work? Is there a hierarchy?
Generally, I think the photographer is usually closer to the client. So when I launch a project, so I think that the photographer has a better idea, from the beginning what the result should be like. So sometimes, yeah, I think there is indeed a kind of hierarchy, and it depends a lot on the relationship with the photographer. Is it someone, I've been working a lot and we have kind of, relationship based on trust, and, you know the person perhaps also privately, and, can communicate openly. But indeed, I think quite often I feel kind of hierarchy, but I think I'm quite fine with that. It's a job, so
Yeah.
it's like having a boss.
What are some difficulties that can arise between a model and a photographer when they're working?
The first thing that comes to my mind, when the photographer wants you to do something that you're not very comfortable with, but at the same time, as a model, you need to be open, for different projects and doing like things you didn't do before, or, you can't tell a photographer, oh, just make pictures only from my right side because it's like my best side, don't make any pictures from the left side. So yeah, I mean, as a model, you need to bring that flexibility and understanding, and it's at the end of the day, it's basically the photographer who like sees, the view, the picture. And sometimes you are very surprised about the result, where you think, that it's not going to work, at the end you think that's cool, actually,
Yeah, no, that definitely does. And it sounds like communication before the shoot can help mitigate that kind of thing, so that you both have an understanding, like not just of what the goal of the shoot is, but also what you each are comfortable with in that work setting as well.
That's definitely an important point. I think communication before the shooting, like, is a great opportunity to get prepared, to get the idea, what is awaiting, you know. Also, even talking to models, perhaps who have worked in the past with the same photographer, knowing, the techniques the photographer works, or even the character, perhaps a model can say, hey, watch out, perhaps he or she, the photographer, is not the most pleasant person to talk to, but it's like, it's not mean, it's just like, the person is, and, it's like, you get prepared for that, that, yeah, someone is not perhaps very sweet with you. So, yeah, indeed, the communication before the shooting is very, very important. Also, like doing like simple things, looking at the pictures, the style the photographer has, so you can imagine, what is the mood, what is the message, what direction are we going to?
Is there something that photographers can do, especially to like just help the model do their best work, whether it's like just making sure you have the right cup of coffee before we start, kind of a thing? Like what can because I know that good photographers want their models to do the best work they can. So what can photographers do to help the model do their best work? Like to cultivate an environment, or like what can they do to get for this to work as well as possible?
Well, I definitely believe that communication is a key, like in many other areas. So as we talked before, communicating before the shooting, telling, what is the idea, what is the goal, perhaps showing some pictures, in what direction we are going to go. Also, having like communicating the schedule perhaps of the project, saying, okay, first day we're shooting like on this island, the second day we're going there, just like getting ready mentally for the project. But of course, modeling is a very creative area, so things get canceled or switch change, so you never know. But communication as much as possible helps a lot, just being prepared and doing the best. And also meeting the photographer before the shoot, just getting to know and talking, like building the trust. Because like a photo shoot, I don't know, it's like it puts you like, in like in the center of attention, and it makes you to some degree vulnerable, so you need to get ready also emotionally for that. So yeah, so it's really important also to build a relationship with the photographer. It's just not like, okay, let's go, let's shoot for 5 minutes, ciao. Yeah.
Have you ever found yourself behind the camera? Are you a photographer? Have you ever done that kind of thing?
I love making pictures. I love art. I love being creative. So, and now it's like 21st century, everyone has like a cell phone, and like nowadays the cameras on cell phones sometimes, like, I mean, they do great things, so basically everyone having like an iPhone, or I don't know, any kind of, cell phone is capable of doing pictures. So yeah, I love doing pictures, and but at the same time, I wouldn't call myself like a photographer, even though there are areas and professions in life where, you don't need to have like a formal education, like, I mean, like a designer or photographer, there are like areas where you can just practice and then get the knowledge, that, technical things, and become one. So, and I always say, everyone is an artist who wants to be an artist. And I say the same about photographers, without, wanting to insult, the professional ones.
If you have a new photographer who's looking at getting into the fashion world and working with models more, what's some advice that you could give them on how to approach the work?
I think practice is the key, in anything you do. The more practice you have, the better you get in anything you do. I mean, but no matter if it's like photographing, modeling, playing a music instrument, so the more you do, the better you get. So and this is the same, for the photographers, coming from different fields. So if it's like photographer coming, someone who's doing like, I don't know, architecture or nature photography, and wants to start like working with models and going into fashion world. So I think, and people say, start small, but have a great big vision. So starting small would be like, working with some local models, just trying different things, trying different ideas, photo shooting, like can be anything, like doing like, I don't know, street photography, or I don't know, beach photography, fashion photography, just trying things out till you get comfortable with those, learning things. So practice is the key.
Practice, practice, practice. So you're in France. Are most of the photographers that you've worked with French, or do you go to different countries for your work? Have you had that opportunity?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been working with photographers from all over the world, and yeah, France is very international. So you need to also hear people from all over the world, also due to events and fashion shows. So yeah, and this is what, makes fashion industry for me and modeling interesting, because, you meet people you wouldn't meet, if you like had a very normal life, seeing the same people at the office,
In filmmaking, the British film industry can be very different from the American film industry, and same with just film industries around the world. Have you noticed that there's differences in the way that modeling or or photographers and all that conduct this type of work around the world?
It depends on the projects. I do notice like mentality differences or approach differences, but since the things are getting increasingly global, whatever you do, and especially fashion, so the approaches are getting mixed, so even if you they take a photographer from France or Italy, if it's a great photographer, so that person has worked, across the world with different people, and in this way, person gets like more open, trying different things out, and they lose the local approach probably, I would say. So it's quite hard to answer that question, because of the globalization on cultural and levels, and in the fashion industry. And fashion is a very global thing.
Would you say that, for instance, there's any particular place where most of the influences for fashion, particularly when it comes to just the topics we're going over, is there any particular places that you find like drive the influences for people around the world?
Perhaps it's a very generic, answer. So basically, the fashion capitals influence a lot, the fashion industry. So Paris, Milan, New York. So sometimes they compete, sometimes they, sometimes they don't compete. But the biggest influences come from the monopoles of fashion. So
That's what I thought. I just wanted to give you a little chance to brag a little bit about France. So there we go. But
sorry, France. France is the best. Vive la France.
Yeah, there we go. And so if we have, so we've talked a lot about the photographer and the model and all that. But when it comes to these meetings where you're working together in advance, are there other people there for that? Is the designer there? Do you ever speak with the designer about the work and all that? Like for instance, for the fashion?
Yeah, sure. Like the designer is like the key person, because it's like the author of the dress or the costume, or the look. So it the result needs to correspond with his or her idea anyway. So it's really important to communicate with the designer. And and it's most of the times the designer who chooses your dress, and sometimes like the last minute.
So is the designer the one also who this might even depend on the shoot, but is the designer the one who also chooses the model for that shoot, or is it the photographer? How does if it's starting with fashion and you've got the clothes that are going to be in the shoot, then at what point do you become involved with that production?
Well, I do personally believe that this is more like a designer who chooses the model, because it's like, okay, I've got the dress. It's up to me to decide who's there in the dress, and then it's the photographer who needs to, to action, and make it happen, the result. And then it depends if you work with an agency or there are any people organizing the shooting and the project. So it really depends on the project, and how big the project is. Are there any other people involved? So you might have like an agency or an agent proposing a catalog of models, and then the designer chooses faces, and
We've talked about the relationship between models, photographers, a lot of the prep that goes into it, how, what the dynamic between that and the designer is. So I want to get into, before we, wrap up here, I want to get into a couple other, I guess, fun questions. So, for instance, is there a photographer that you're just dying to work with?
Oh, that's a great question. I think... I think there are too many, that I would be dying. I would be dying to work with. This moment, just I don't know, too many coming to my head. But let me answer this question in the next podcast.
Okay, all right. I'll have you on again, and I'll be like, okay.
That's indeed a great question. Great question. So
sort of on that same vein, though, there's, I'm just going to bring this selfishly to movies for a moment. After all, we did meet at the Cannes Film Festival for the Rain Dance Villa party. Are there any movies that you feel accurately capture what it's like to be a fashion model?
Oh, that's also a great question. Now I need to think. Ah. I think I will need to Google.
That's all
on
right.
this
Take your
one.
time.
No, but it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. Not actually, nothing comes to my mind now. But there are definitely movies on that. Yeah. I need to watch movies on models. That's amazing. That's amazing point. Sorry for ruining your question.
No, that's quite all right. I just realized I should
Oh,
ask
God.
everybody this kind of question. You know, it's like, oh, if you're in real estate, what's the best real estate movie out there? You know, and
Oh.
you know, that kind of thing. Same thing with I should ask everybody this question, and that way it's secretly a way for me to get movie recommendations so I can watch stuff. But
Did and now I I will turn the table around. What about you? Do you have any film recommendations for me, like on modeling and fashion and like,
ooh,
yeah.
there's an American movie that is pretty well known as one of the movies about fashion.
Okay.
It's got Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway in it. It's called
Oh, yeah.
you know,
The Devil Wears
The
Prada.
Devil Wears
Yeah.
Prada. And I actually, full disclosure, I haven't seen that entire movie.
Really?
Yeah,
How dare you?
but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I have watched at least one scene from it, and that scene is great. And I believe that scene pretty much, in a lot of ways, sums up directing for me as far as filmmaking goes. It's not just directing, like, because it's a film that's about fashion, but you can relate that to anything. And actually, I know about it because my dad was telling me about something. I was reading a book about filmmakers, and I was telling him, oh, there's this filmmaker who I'm not going to say their name, there's this filmmaker who was talking about, like, oh yeah, I just kind of wing it. I just throw stuff in there. I don't really put that much thought into it. You know, sometimes a critic will ask me, like, oh, why is the dress blue? Is it because the character is sad? And the director will just be like, I mean, because I like blue. I don't know. And my dad said, do you think that's how the best directors direct, is by not caring what color something is? And I was just like, I mean, I don't know. I'm like 14. And he says, like, have you seen The Devil Wears Prada? And he talks about this scene.
That's a classic movie.
Yeah.
I think that's like,
the scene with the belt is the one I'm talking about, where there's these two turquoise belts, and the assistant says, like, oh, they're so different. And Anne Hathaway, like, snickers because they both are turquoise. They're just a little different. And Meryl Streep just, like, takes Anne Hathaway apart piece by piece, you know, to explain why those two belts are actually extremely different, and this matters, and it actually it's brilliant. I'm trying to. It's a great movie. I think that's a great scene anyway. So, Devil Wears Prada.
And I also loved Meryl Streep in that movie. It's a great job.
There's also
Meryl Streep.
I don't know how you'd feel about this. There's a movie called Zoolander.
I'm a fan of Emily in Paris. So for me, you know, like someone, like a person from Lithuania moving to France, you know, and experiencing those cultural differences. And I really could identify myself, you know, with Emily in Paris when I was saying, like, okay, there's Emily in Paris and there's Celeste. So yeah, that was cool. And yeah, I loved every minute of it. So I mean, I should, and as I said, I should definitely watch more movies on models. And yeah, question myself, is it me too?
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining me, Celeste. I had a really good time talking with you. It was great to follow up with you after meeting you at the Rain Dance Villa party at Cannes. And thanks a lot for just taking time to speak with me today and, give some deeper insight into what you do and how photographers can work better with models and all that, because that's something that I'm sure some of our customers can get a lot out of. And but it's been really nice talking to you, and it would be really cool to have you on the podcast again sometime.
My pleasure. I look forward to it. So yeah, let's tackle other projects and other topics next time. So it's lovely seeing you again, and yeah, I'm so happy for you getting married soon. So I think
next month.
I think you are now in the middle of preparation and many things to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Wedding planning's going really great. I'm very excited. I'm starting to get that fun, nervous feeling of, oh wow, this is really happening. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. So I'm really happy that a lot of great things have happened this year. Things I've waited for my whole life, and I'm really happy about it. So thank you.
I'm happy to hear it. It's beautiful to listen to you talking like this. So amazing.
Shucks. Well, she's the best. So yeah. And all right. Well, thanks a lot, Celeste, for joining me here. So Celeste, have you got any projects coming up that you want to talk about?
At this stage, there are quite several projects that I'm going to work, like a project in Italy and then 2 projects in Spain. But at this moment, I will try to keep those quiet until they're released, Yeah.
Well, if any of our listener watchers are interested in following Celeste and perhaps seeing what announcements she makes on her different social media outlets so that you can see what kind of projects she's going to be doing soon, why don't, we'll have links in the description of this video to all that. But Celeste, why don't you just tell people where they can find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, hello, Instagram. And so my Instagram is Celeste Inise, like 1 N. So you can read it like Celeste Inise, or you can read it like Celeste in Eyes. Yeah.
Fantastic. And once again, we'll have those in the description of the video. So make sure you give Celeste a good follow. And look forward to having another conversation with you here on our podcast.
Me too. Thank you so much. See you next time.